Welcome. I'm Callie Crossley, host and executive editor of the GBH radio program Under the Radar with Callie Crossley and host of the GBH TV program Basic Black. I also have Monday morning commentaries on GBH's morning edition every Monday, 6:45, 9:45. Hope you'll listen. I am so delighted to be here with you tonight. Welcome to Beyond the Page, another great discussion. In a moment, I'll be joined by our author, Hank Phillippi Ryan. But first, I have a few housekeeping details. First, a big thank you to Trident Booksellers and Cafe for partnering with the Beyond the Page book club on this event. Trident is open for curbside pickup and limited capacity in-store browsing. Visit them in-store 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, or on their website 24/7. Now, I'd like to take a moment to orient you on how tonight's event will work. As a virtual guest, you are not on camera and you will not be able to join in the conversation with your audio this evening, but we do want to hear from you. So if you have a question for Hank, you can ask her a question by opening up the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen and typing in your question. Feel free to add your questions at any point during our conversation. I'll do my best to address as many of them as I can. Also, if you see a question that you want to hear the answer to, you can vote for it by clicking on the thumbs up icon in the Q&A tab next to the questions you like, and they will move up to the top of the queue, and we'll do our best to ask most of the popular questions. We also have enabled Zoom's automated captioning feature this evening. To turn on the closed captioning feature, click the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. Two transcription display options will pop up. We recommend that you select subtitle to enable captioning at the bottom of your screen. You can also select full transcript. A sidebar window opens where you can see where each speaker is saying, what each speaker is saying. Please bear in mind that closed captioning might be slightly delayed, just a little bit behind us. Lastly, we want to interact with you. You'll see poll questions pop up on your screen during this conversation. Here's the first one. Did you finish reading The First to Lie? You may answer or not. That's depending on you. That takes care of housekeeping. So let's begin. It's my pleasure to introduce Hank Phillippi Ryan. Hank Phillippi Ryan is the USA Today best-selling author of 13 novels of suspense. She has won multiple prestigious awards for her crime fiction, including 5 Agathas, 4 Anthonys, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She's also the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV and has won 37 Emmys, 14 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and dozens of other honors for her groundbreaking journalism. National book reviews have called Hank a master at crafting suspenseful mysteries and a superb and gifted storyteller. Hank's novels have been named Best Thrillers of the Year by Library Journal, New York Post, BookPub, Pop Sugar, Real Simple Magazine, and others. Her 2020 thriller is The First to Lie. As you know, it garnered a starred review from Publishers Weekly and is a nominee for the Anthony Award for Best Novel and the iconic Mary Higgins Clark Award. Now, Hank has one other book, but we're going to talk about that at the end of our conversation tonight. Hello, Hank.
Hey, Callie, it's so nice to see you. I wonder if the audience knows that we have known each other for 40.
I was going to say years.
I really think it's 40 years. Could that possibly be true?
Yes,
Maybe
it
more?
could possibly. Yes, we've known it. We were Cub reporters way back in Indiana. So we've known each other a long, long time. And I am now a fan of your second career as a mystery writer. Love all of your work. I've read every single one of them.
Oh my golly, Heather, that's so great. I mean, we've both evolved. We both have, our lives have changed. We're both sort of the poster children for trying something new and setting foot into
Exactly.
another territory and just seeing how it goes. And so it's such a joy to be with you here tonight. Extra special.
Well, it's a joy to have you too. So let's jump right in and just give an overall setup. And just by the way, people, don't worry, no spoilers. This book has so many twists and turns. We're very careful about not spoiling anything. A general overview first.
Well, this is the book we're talking about, of course, The First to Lie. And you can see that juxtaposition of the windows in the apartment building. It's obviously set to be a conflict. And you're so right, it's really difficult to talk about a thriller, a novel of psychological suspense without giving anything away. But the way I sort of try to describe it is there was a challenge on Twitter that said, can you describe your book in 4 words? So I
Wow.
thought, okay. And that was really interesting because it does make you distill the book into its essentials. And I think, and I wonder if you all agree, the essentials of The First to Lie are motherhood, betrayal, obsession, and revenge. And I and it,
Good.
it, you know, and I think that the other thing about The First to Lie, there was another challenge. You can see how social media eyes, Diane. There was a challenge on Facebook that said, describe your book in 5 phrases without giving it away. So I figured it is an undercover reporter who's in too deep, a devastating childhood betrayal, a beautiful sailboat on the Chesapeake Bay, a rich and powerful family, and an ice pick that is not used for ice. And that is The First to Lie. So what do you all think? Do you think that's right?
I have to say I think that's really pretty good. That's excellent, actually. You should know, but it's sometimes hard for authors to be able to weed out everything that won't actually tip us in one direction or another, but you did it excellently. One of your signatures, and that may come, and you can answer this question, from being an on-air investigative reporter. So you're into the news all the time and into the headline news. You can take something that we think we've heard of that kind of sort of reflects stories we might have read about or heard about, and make them a part of the plot. And this is the case in this story, First to Lie.
I agree with you. Thank you. Because if someone were describing it in a kind of dry way, they might talk about the calculus of the pharmaceutical industry and that big organization and how the people in the pharmaceutical industry have medications that they want people to buy and how that works and the balance between what works and what doesn't work and how many people are harmed and how many people are helped. But what makes, my fiction is not my television stories made into fiction. It's not real life made into fiction, but it's the emotion and the personal side of those stories. So put the pharmaceutical industry aside and think about motherhood and women and family and those kinds of relationships. And how upset would you be if something happened to you caused by a big corporation that you could have known about and that they did know about, but no one told you about, and your life was ruined as a result of it? So I try to just turn the microscope on one little person and use that person's problem to illustrate a bigger problem. I mean, my books are fast-paced, page-turning entertainment. It's completely entertainment, but underneath that entertainment, there's always a thought-provoking, I try to at least, a thought-provoking theme that maybe your life will change as a result of that you'll see other people's lives in a different way as a result of reading this book. I mean, I always say I want you to miss your stop on the T because you're reading my books. But again, I try to make them have an importance or a weight that people can latch onto and feel that they've related to it in some way, that this is very realistic and it might have happened to them or someone they know or love.
And of course, we can't overlook, the book is called The First to Lie. Lying is a big part of this book. And I'd love if you would read that first page. It's not even the first page of the first chapter. It's before the first chapter, your setup on that page. If you would do us the honor of reading that.
I think that's perfect, Callie. Thank you, because this is the essence of the book, and this is how I wanted you all to start thinking about, is it really lying? We all sort of lie about who we are. You and I talk differently when we're here live with hundreds of people than we would if we were out having coffee. Well, not that differently, but okay, but somewhat differently. To our boss or to our spouse or to a stranger, we become a different person. And what sort of started me on this was that thing that we all do, whether we're an undercover reporter like I am some of the time, or whether we're just undercover for ourselves. So this is the very first thing readers saw when they opened The First to Lie. Without any sneaky fine print and totally knowing everything you know now, if you could start your adult life over as someone else, would you do it? Say you could choose the person, where they live and what they do. You could choose what parts of your prior knowledge to retain and what parts to forget. Family baggage, discarded. Friends and lovers and commitments, erased along with your vanished past. Obsessions? Obsessions could stay. How you look and how you sound, your goals and your motivations and deepest desires, whatever you want, you could do it, be it, love it, lose it. Sound good? I fibbed. There is one bit of fine print. You. Every time you'd look in the mirror, you'd remember. Mirrors make such false promises. They tell you, look here and you'll see yourself. But that's the first lie. You see a face and a body, sure, but a mirror doesn't show your true self. That you have to find on your own by looking inside, and no seductive piece of silvered glass can help you. Still, I know all it takes is a tweak here and a twist there to become someone else. So would you do it to get what you always wanted? Sure you would. All you have to do is lie.
Excellent. So that sets us up for what some have called a corkscrew of a thriller, because you just really keep us going around and around in circles. Again, I'm giving nothing away, but just try to, if you can, explain how you were able to cast doubt, I mean doubt, on every single person. I am so twisted up, before I even get to the midway point. I thought I could figure out, who was really lying and who wasn't, but nope, couldn't.
Well, first of all, and thank you. I hope that's a good thing. And we should talk about the process of writing this, because that was also pretty funny.
That's what I want to know. Yeah.
The juggle. So I started my, the little beginning domino of the book is that everyone is telling the exact truth, their truth. Every character is telling the truth about who they are for who they are. So there's that. So you can believe everyone who's talking, because they're seeing the world through their eyes. So one of the themes again is, what is truth? What is lying? What is presenting yourself as another person or another self, or having another motivation or another goal? The bottom line of that opening was, what would you do to get what you want? How far would you go to get what you want? And as an undercover reporter, which I have done many times, I have become someone else to get who I want. That's one of the ways that this book began. And I started thinking about going undercover, because when you're undercover, and you know this too, when you're in disguise, which we have both been, most of you has to really feel that you are that other person. You can't be yourself pretending to be someone else. You are that other person with just this little tiny sliver of reality left over to remind yourself who you really are. And that idea of going undercover to be someone else in order to get what you want, that I've done it. And so that felt comfortable to me. And that's really how the story began. So I use the truth to tell lies. And that is how that story unfolds. And you know what, Callie, it drives me kind of crazy, because you and I are so alike. I'll be watching a television show, some sort of crime fiction show with my husband, and I'll say, ooh, it's the sister. Oh, somebody's going to drown. Oh, she's pregnant. Oh, it's the brother. And Jonathan will say, can you just watch it? Can you not try to figure it out? And I say, no, I have to figure it out. I have to try to figure it out. I have to see if I'm smarter than the author. And when my readers read my books, I know my readers are smart, and I know so many of you are trying to figure out what happened. And sometimes people can't, and that's kind of fun when you think, "Ooh, I got that, ha ha." And when you're surprised, that is the best. When you say, "Oh my golly, I should have seen that coming." And I had that feeling for the very first time. I remember it perfectly when I was about 12 and I read Murder on the Orient Express, the famous, iconic Agatha Christie novel. I won't tell you the ending, as if you haven't read it, go, not right now, but later, you all go read it. And the ending was so astonishing. And I thought, wait a minute, how did she do that? It was so surprising, but yet inevitable, and all the clues were there. And that is what I have been striving for as an author. I'm going to tell you everything, but there's a little bit of what Sue Grafton used to call sleight of hand in it. So that I'm saying, look over here, shiny thing, when really something else is going on underneath.
Well, as I've told you many times, I really enjoy your characters and your dialogue particularly. Now, maybe that's because I just can't imagine writing fictional dialogue. I know what it looks like on the page when it feels authentic, and I know when it doesn't, and yours always feels authentic. And so you really get a good sense of the characters in your books. But this one, as I said, because there's so much going on and you're like, wait a minute, what does that mean? What does that mean? It really gives you something. I want our guests here tonight to have a sense of a little of the writing. And believe me, I have carefully picked this excerpt so as not to reveal a thing. So I wonder if you would read the chapter from the Nora chapter.
Okay, let me find that here. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can read this from the book.
That would be good.
See, when you read the book, if you haven't read the book, and if you haven't, I can get you some copies. There are chapters marked Ellie and chapters marked Nora, so you know the point of view that we're talking to. And this chapter is from the point of view of Nora, who is a pharmaceutical salesperson. Impossible to say yes, impossible to say no. Nora stood in the vestibule of her apartment building, still wearing her coat and shawl. Errands accomplished, drugstore and dry cleaner, she'd planned to forget about the rigors of Pharmanex, the pharmaceutical company, and collapse on her couch. Another glamorous Saturday, pizza for dinner, a good book, and a sleep-late Sunday. But then Guy's call had come. She clamped her cell phone to her ear, frozen with indecision. Finally, she lowered her shopping bag to the floor and hooked the dry cleaning hangers over the mail table. Well, she began, even as she spoke, not sure how she should handle this. Come on, Nora. Guy's voice sounded even more persuasive than usual, and she pictured him at the bar where they'd first met, thrusting and parrying with words. I'll be back from New York in an hour or two. I'll hop into an Uber and come right to your apartment. Just tell me where it is. I've missed you, Red, and why wait any longer? Nora could think of about 50 reasons why, but she could also think of about 50 more reasons why it might be pretty darn fabulous to see him. Red, she thought. She was also annoyed at the longing she felt, the longing she had to share her life, her future. She couldn't imagine the next 50 or however many years with only emptiness and loveless solitude and pizza and cable TV. Sure, she could be successful short-term at what she did for now. 2 doctors had just put in substantial orders, so yesterday's Attagirl mail had informed her. Pharma sales was all about pretty, and she had pretty nailed. Score. But her mother had warned her long ago that pretty faded overnight. And now there was no one left, no family she cared about, no friends, no one connected or devoted to her, not since high school. Then came Guy. And what did he truly want? Guy and Nora hadn't progressed to any conversation like that, never gotten past the tantalizing shallows. She needed to find out. My apartment is... She stopped mid-sentence, wondering what would be appropriate and believable. Still a bit disorganized. You know, I just moved in. She took a chance. How about your place in Back Bay? He paused. How about meeting somewhere in the middle? Have a drink, maybe dinner. Then she grasped what had been nagging at her. He was lying.
I love that passage.
And why, Callie? Why do you?
I don't know. I remember getting to that point and I thought, oh, dun, 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 dun. So that was pretty good for me. I always like to talk about writing process with the authors in these kinds of discussions.
Let me tell you one more thing about that passage, and I love it too. And thank you for picking up on how that is a really pivotal chapter, because we talk about motivation and we talk about the undercurrent of conversation, and we talk about how we say one thing, but we really mean something else. And as this story develops, and I hope all of you, hundreds of people I'm seeing here, I hope all of you realize that as you're reading it, that as Callie is saying, this dun 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 is underneath a lot of it, and all of it will be revealed in the end.
It is also true that we look for cues that you aren't lying or that you are telling the truth. And we're not always so confident that the cues that we're taking away from what's happening with the other person is actually what's really happening, because we don't know.
That's the chess game that authors play with readers, is like, for instance, I think, ooh, if I say this, then the reader will think that. So I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say this, so the reader thinks that. And that's why you just have to read it.
Exactly. But I meant also that the characters in that scene, there is Nora trying to figure out stuff, and she's trying to figure out what are the cues that will tell me if Guy is lying. Exactly. And she's going to that, so that when you finally get to the last line of that piece where she says, oh, okay, he's lying, that means that a couple of things that he said just triggered her no, I don't believe you button. Yeah.
I love when you read my books, Callie. You always get them so beautifully. Thank you.
It's good. But all right. So I love to ask the authors about writing process. Now, first of all, how do you write a book a year, which is essentially what you're doing?
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm doing. And it's exactly why my brain is on permanent fried state at this point. First of all, I love it. I mean, I completely love it. It's so interesting to take what I've learned after 43 years as a reporter. Remember, you and I write stories every day with beginning, middle, and an end, with a problem that needs to be solved, with a character that we care about. We do research and track down clues and follow leads and do interviews and hear dialogue. We want the good guys to win and the bad guys to get what's coming to them. And in the end, we want to change the world and get some justice, right? This is exactly what we do as reporters. And that's exactly what I do in my story. So it's the same rhythm, it's the same arc, it's the same story arc. So, I started writing fiction 14 years ago or so, but I've been writing for years before that, stories that you care about. I ask myself when I write my television stories, why do I care about this? Why do I care? Let's make sure that the viewers will care. And that's what I do in my stories as well, is to say, like, let's make the reader care about this person, be relatable, be engaged, be riveted to the page. It is such a discipline, though, Callie, the knowledge that, after working in a newsroom where everybody's yelling and working together and there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of teamwork, here I'm just me and this computer. I sit right here at this very computer, just me and the computer, with a story evolving. And so I don't use an outline at all. I have no idea what's going to happen next until I write the next word and the next paragraph and the next scene. And I think, oh, that's so interesting. Who'd have thought that would happen? And I think it is like doing a television story, because when I have an idea for an investigation, I don't know what's going to happen at the end of it. I don't know what the real answer is, because if I did, it wouldn't be new. It would just be what's already been on TV. So I'm looking for a new story as an investigative reporter. And I'm out there searching for the story. And that's how I write a book a year, is that I've trained myself to search for the story. And I know along the way, all of you who may be wanting to write or who are writers, along the way there is quicksand and there is pitfalls and there are brick walls and there is every image that you can possibly conjure for a problem. And I think okay, that's all right. I'm looking for the story. I have a whole year to do this, sort of. I can work this out. There's a wonderful quote from Thomas Edison who said, when you think you have exhausted all of the possibilities, remember this, you haven't.
Hmm.
And that's what gets me through this. So when I'm having a bad writing day, I think, it's not that I can't figure this out. It's that I just haven't yet. So it's a very difficult process. It is such hard work. It is harder work than I have ever possibly imagined that it could possibly be. But it is so gloriously rewarding. Um, when the story emerges, when I figured out the end of The First to Lie, I was by myself in this study. And when you don't know what the ending is, at some point you think, oh my golly, have I set up a mystery that I don't know how to solve? Now what have I done? And when I figured out the ending of The First to Lie, I was here in my study by myself and I stood up and I applauded. I thought, oh, I got this. Yes, you're so smart. You figured this out. So when people say, wow, the twist in The First to Lie or the ending of The First to Lie, wow, you really surprised me. I say, yeah, wasn't that a surprise? Talk about a surprise ending. I surprise myself every time. And that is what Sue Grafton used to call the magic, that somehow our writer brains offer us, if we are lucky and open to it, our writer brains offer us a story, and somehow that is magic, and somehow that turns into a book like this. And I have no idea how it works. In answer to your question, I have no idea how it works. I just embrace it every moment.
Well, some may know that the kind of writing that you do for television is very different from what you're doing now, writing mysteries. And was that a challenge? Because television, of course, we can see a lot of it. And so we are taught as television reporters to be spare with the words and let the other elements lead often to make a really good piece. But in a book, you got to tell me all those little details so I can be there with you. How hard was a shift was that for you?
Well, that was so interesting. There were two things that really kind of worried me about writing a novel. One was whether I could make stuff up. You know, right? Think of how long I've worked.
Yes.
The setting that exists, the dialogue that exists, the story that exists, the documents that exist, and how often have I thought, oh my golly, this would be so much better story if X, Y, and Z, but it isn't that. It isn't that. But in writing fiction, there's every possibility. So I wondered if I could do that, and that was a challenge. But the other thing that served me well about it, and this is exactly what you alluded to, is that we are taught use the video. If there's no video, then it doesn't exist. And the more gorgeously evocative the video is, then the better the story. Whether it's the pictures or the sound, whatever it is, show me that. Show me that. Mm-hmm. So I think I learned as a result of that to try to write as cinematically as I could, to honestly actually envision the story, to see who's in the room and to see what the room looks like, or to see what the weather is and feel what the weather is and smell what the cooking, the fragrance of the cooking. James Patterson talks about this all the time. I have a yellow sticky of his quote on my computer, and it says, "Be there." That's so carefully written. I'm not doing a good job with this. It says, "Be there, be there," and that's how I try to do it. I try to see whether I can make a movie of the page. And when readers say to me, "Oh, I could just see that," that's the best thing that I can possibly hear, because that means I have turned my words into video, and that's what I strive to do.
Okay, so this is a real fan question since I've read all the books. You started off with one character, then you shift to another character whom I love. And I haven't seen her in the last few books because you've been doing these wonderful standalones. I like them, but I'd love you to go back to Jane Ryland. Will we ever get back to her?
That is so lovely, Callie. Thank you. Jane Ryland is an investigative reporter in Boston who's clawing her way to the top. And I've written 5 books, Jane Ryland books so far, beginning with The Other Woman. And that is the one that won the Mary Higgins Clark Award. Jane Ryland has some problems as a reporter because she's too honorable and she won't do some of the things that some of her bosses want her to do. So she goes out of TV, she goes into radio, she goes into newspaper, she goes back to television, she goes back to radio, she goes to magazines, those kinds of things. She has a little bit of a hard time because she's too honorable. And yes, just because it's just us. I do have a contract for another Jane Ryland book.
Yay!
It's called Out Cold, but it's not next. But I signed my name to it, this is breaking news, Callie.
Yes, it definitely is. Which leads me, because I want to also let all of our listeners and viewers know that you actually, in this moment, have yet another book past the first to lie. It's called Her Perfect Life. So please tell us a little bit about that one as well.
Okay, I'm going to show you this cover because this is the prettiest, most gorgeous cover you've ever seen in your life. Look at that. Is
Really
that,
pretty.
I mean, look how enigmatic and sophisticated and mysterious she is. And my name is Shiny. Look at that. That's great. This
You
is
can enjoy it.
my brand new psychological thriller, a standalone that's just hasn't, I think it's been out for a week. I think this is
Yeah.
his 1 week birthday of Her Perfect Life. It got starred reviews from Kirkus and from Publishers Weekly. So that is quite amazing. I can give you my 5 words. That's what I'll do. I'll give you my
Yes,
5 words
good.
for Her Perfect Life, which is sisters, betrayal, fame, guilt, and revenge. So this is about a reporter who was named Lily Atwood, a reporter who was so celebrated that her fans have given her a hashtag Perfect Lily. Perfect Lily has fame, she has fortune, she has Emmys, she's the single mom to an adorable 7-year-old daughter. But Perfect Lily also has a deep, dark secret. And the problem is, how do you keep a secret when you're always in the spotlight? And Lily begins to learn that the spotlight may be the most dangerous place of all. So Her Perfect Life is 2 strong women facing off in a high-stakes cat and mouse game to prove their truth about a devastating betrayal. But which woman is the cat and which woman is the mouse? And that is Her Perfect Life.
That is a perfect segue at this moment. This ends the part of the program where I ask questions. When we come back in a few minutes, all of you will have an opportunity to ask the questions you're dying to ask, and that'll be great. But right now, I want to introduce my colleague, Sandy Chin, who's going to talk to you about other ways to support GBH. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Callie. Thank you so much. And hello to everyone at home. Thank you for spending time with us during today's Beyond the Page event. And there's always something so special about a community of people brought together by a book. And if you are enjoying tonight's event and Beyond the Page events like this one, please consider making a donation to GBH as a monthly sustainer. Sustainers serve as a steady and reliable ongoing source of support for GBH, allowing us to keep the news and all the programs you love on air and online. You watch or listen to GBH programs all year long, so why not spread out your support throughout the year as well? And it's easy to do with a gift of $5 a month as a GBH sustaining member or $60 all at once. We will send you an autographed copy of Hank Phillippi Ryan's Her Perfect Life. Or you can receive an autographed paperback of October's book, Happiest Girl in the World by Alina Dillon. 2 great options to choose from, and it's our way of saying thanks. Visit gbh.org/support events to see these books and more, or scan the QR code here on the screen behind me now, and it will open that secure donation form on your smartphone. You can also text the keyword GBH to 800-204-3811 to make a donation. Giving takes just a few minutes of your time and a few dollars a month on your credit card. And if you're already a GBH member, thank you for your support. If you wish to become one, just click on the link in the chat tab now or text GBH to 800-204-3811 to make that donation. And now back to Callie with more of Beyond the Page.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And now we're back with all of you, and I get to ask your questions to Hank. I'm just going to take a moderator's privilege and give a shout out to my producer's mother, Hannah Ubilee's mother, who's in this conversation. I know she's here, so I just want to welcome her to this conversation.
And it's funny because we can't see the people who were here. So I'm just aching to know who is here. And I would love you to contact me via my website or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and tell me that you were here, because I am so grateful to all of you for being here tonight. It's very frustrating not to be able to see who you are, but thank you for coming.
So one of our questions is, were you inspired because of the scandals in the pharmaceutical industry? She wants to know if you were compelled to write it because of that. Now, you spoke earlier about just getting behind the emotion, but you might want to add to that.
I mean, it's interesting, and that's a great question, because I don't remember at what point in the writing. I mean, this book was written, I want to say 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. Is that possible? Because remember, there's the year of writing it, and then there's the sort of production year, and then there's the publishing year. So this story really came from an undercover story that I did, where I went undercover to doctors' offices to find out if they would tell me the truth about their malpractice history. My producer at the time, a man named Chris, and I dressed up undercover. You would not recognize me, as a couple who wanted to have children. And we went to doctors' offices who we knew had massive malpractice losses. I mean, malpractice cases are, de rigueur. It's everybody has them. It's something that happens all the time. It doesn't mean anything. But we had discovered, a source had told us that it was very difficult to find out a doctor's real malpractice history. It was not in their public record at the Board of Registration in Medicine. It was not available. And when I went to the Board of Registration in Medicine and said, how is a patient supposed to know whether their doctor has a hideous history of malpractice losses? I was told, you should ask the doctor, and the doctor will tell you. And frankly, I said, no, I don't think they will. And she said, oh, well, they're supposed to. So we went undercover to find out whether they would tell us the truth about their malpractice losses. And I had 3 sweatshirts and a work shirt. And in the buttonhole of my work shirt was what looked like a button, but it was really a camera lens. And snaking down through a hole in my shirt and a hole in my 3 sweatshirts was the cord of a camera that was in a fanny pack that I was glamorously carrying. And not one doctor, I mean, we only went to doctors who we knew had this problem. Not one doctor told me the truth about what had happened. And as a result of that, the rules were changed, and now that information is public information as a result of this story. But I began to think, I thought, these doctors lied to me about their realities. They lied to me. And that's bad. But I lied too. I didn't say I'm Hank Phillippi Ryan from Channel 7 and I have a hidden camera and I want to find out if you're telling me the truth. I was the pitiful little wife. And so I started thinking about, why was it okay for me to lie? Why was that different from the doctors lying? And that was sort of the essence of that. And then I began to wonder, well, what lie would be even more relatable than just lying about a malpractice history? What if it were lying about a medication? What if somebody wanted to have children? What if it was about your family? I mean, that your family is the most important thing in your life. Then that would be devastating. Then that would be a real betrayal. And that's sort of where the story came from. So obviously, if you've read the book, that's not what the book is about. It just isn't that. But it kind of is. It has the little bit of an essence of that. And that is the first domino that's one of the dominoes that was knocked over for this story.
So Kathy asked, what American or international mystery writers influenced you? And before you answer, I want to let people know that even though this is your second career, ostensibly, you've become quite a leader in the mystery writers world. I mean, you run a couple of forums, you created a support group of several support groups, I guess, if you could call
Well,
it.
you know what? It's support groups in a way that it supports readers.
Exactly.
So readers, and it supports authors. Absolutely. International best-selling author Karen Dion and I have an organization called a forum called The Back Room, where we invite four wonderful authors twice a month, four different authors twice a month, and have Zoom sessions where you can really interact with the authors. Because it started as a result of the pandemic, where we realized that there was no discoverability, that there were no author events, that there was no way, it was very difficult. You couldn't even go to a bookstore. There was no way to easily and gracefully discover a new book and a new author. And we were hardly talking to each other back then. We were just getting our little Zoom sea legs. So we decided to have The Back Room, which is still going. It's marvelous. And I urge you to come visit us. For instance, next
But
weekend.
she was one of your influencers, though, in addition to it. She was one of your influencers.
Well, Karen Dion and I are friends. We
Mhm.
write very different kinds of books. The authors who've influenced me, Lisa Jewell and Louise Candlish and Lisa Scottolini and Sue Grafton, those Harlan Coben and Tess Gerritsen, and I could just go on and on about it. Claire McIntosh and Gillian Macmillan, the wonderful British authors, Canadian authors, who have we've all gotten to be friends. That's the crazy part. We've all gotten to be friends during the pandemic. New authors, Amanda Jayatissa, who lives in Sri Lanka. How would we have known each other before this? The fabulous Wanda Morris, whose new book is coming out, who lives in Atlanta. We may have never crossed paths without Zoom. So those are the people who have influenced me in the past and are influencing me now, and it's really a joy. If we can take anything wonderful from the pandemic, that connection. My Canadian author friend Hannah Mary McKinnon and I read the first chapter of a new book out loud every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:30 p.m. ET on Facebook. You'll hear the first chapter. It's just what a wonderful way to be introduced to a new book and be part of a community like this. I mean, we come together in this book club, having read a book together and being able to talk about the book and knowing that, hundreds of people are here. I'm looking at the number. Hundreds of people are here tonight having the same discussion, people who love reading and who love books and who love talking about both of them.
Great. Barbara T. asked, at what point during your writing process do you decide on a title?
Barbara, that's such a good question. It's really interesting because it just depends on the book. My book, The Other Woman, that was called The Other Woman. It had to be The Other Woman. That's what it's about. Many other women and different kinds of incarnations of other women. Perfect title. My book, The Murder List, that won the Anthony for best novel last year. I had the title The Murder List before I had the book, before I even had the story. I had it. The First to Lie came from, this is so interesting, The First to Lie was titled pretty early on as well, because someone in my book, The Murder List, is talking to a police officer, and she says to the police officer says to her, well, the first to talk is the first to walk. Meaning the first person to rat out his comrade in crime is the first person to get a lighter sentence. And my character in the book, my fictional character, says, yeah, but what about the first to lie? And I thought, oh, The First to Lie, that is a good title. So again, I didn't know what the book was about, but my title for this book, The First to Lie, was created by a fictional character who I created. And I think that's just such a meta way of looking at it. Her Perfect Life, though, very different. Her Perfect Life is essentially about, the new book is essentially about an investigative reporter who has an anonymous source who has been giving her great stories, one after the other, great stories. And at one point he calls and starts telling her secrets about herself.
Mm.
And so I had called it The Next Caller. And my editor said something like, "Great, that's a good title, Hank, but maybe not for this book." And she's very polite. So her perfect life evolved when I started thinking about how Lily Atwood, the main character in Her Perfect Life, is so frantic to protect herself and her daughter and to keep her life perfect and to keep her reporter persona perfect. It suddenly became imbued with this symbolism and cynicism and impossibility. We all want to have a perfect life, and we all know it's impossible. So when you see that cover, we mean this in a very skeptical and mysterious kind of way. So Barbara, who knows how the titles get involved? And it's really a wonderful, again, magical process.
Joanne asks, many of the characters are playing multiple roles, which seems to be a large theme in this book. Duplicity. Is this good or bad? She wants you to put a value on duplicity.
That's so interesting, Joanna, because you can't really put a value on duplicity. We've done it, you've done it, we've all done it. We're all very nice to someone who we don't really like. We've exaggerated things about how lovely someone looks, or how delicious the dinner is, or how much work we've done. We're super polite to strangers. We put on a face all the time. So we're all duplicitous. But the key of a thriller, this is a psychological thriller. And what you do in a psychological thriller is, you see, my books don't have graphic sex, they don't have graphic violence, they don't have inappropriate language, but they do have mind games and deception and gaslighting and manipulation. And so in a book, this duplicity, and especially in The First to Lie, this duplicity is essential for the book. How far would you go to get what you want? And if being someone else, as we all are every day, depending on our situation, how far would you go to get what you want? And if being someone else for some amount of time on whatever level works, then that is successful. It shows in a psychological thriller that duplicity shows that danger and destruction doesn't always come from a gun or a knife. It comes from the psychological damage that we do to each other, and the deep harm of betrayal and the lack of trust. And when the carpet of trust gets pulled out from under you, and you topple over and you feel that you have been supremely wronged, then how far would you go to put the world back in equilibrium? So that duplicity, yes, I so agree with you, and I applaud that question is the essence of the book. Absolutely. Whether it's good or bad depends, just like in life.
Aaron asks, I thought you did a great job of the male perspective. What is your process to capture a man's perspective versus a woman's?
Aaron, I don't think of it that way. First of all, thank you. Yay, thank you. That's very reassuring. I don't think of it like man and woman. I think of it as who this person is and what they want. And it's kind of interesting. It's kind of almost what is the Stanislavski method? Method acting is the word I'm searching for so unsuccessfully. When I'm Guy, I know that I sit in a different way, and my attitudes when I'm writing is kind of different. And I see, and this is when we talk about point of view, I see the world through Guy's eyes, his emotional eyes, his physical eyes, his motivational eyes. How does he see the world? What does he want? And what does he hope to get out of it? And who is he dealing with? And how does he use them or need them or hope for them? And what can he get from them? And what can he give them? And how can he, because it's psychological suspense, how can he manipulate to get what he wants? So, when I'm writing Nora, she's gorgeous. I write Nora, I sit up very straight, and I'm sort of try to be graceful and elegant. And I think of Nora words. The same with Ellie, the same with Brooke, the same with Lacey. And with men, I just think of them as a character. As I said, I think of them as a character who wants something. Now, there are things, and forgive me, and I hope this doesn't get us in trouble. There are things like if I'm in Nora's head and she sees a white dress, she might say, oh, look at that tulle ballet length Vera Wang strapless, dress from 2010. And Guy might think, oh, that's a white dress. So, right? So that's the difference, is what someone might know. A police officer will look at a scene through a police officer's point of view, when a civilian will look at that scene from a completely different point of view. So I ask myself, who is this person? And what do they want here? And what do they see? And what do they miss? What do they miss? That's the other thing that's so important.
Don asks, is this book written for women? I am a male and am attracted to female mystery writers, but I admit to feeling that the first to lie seems somewhat distant to me. I think you're always very woman forward in all of your work.
Woman forward, that's really interesting. I sort of embrace that. Yeah, women forward. I mean, it's, I talked to someone about this once. A person actually said to me once, I don't read books by women. A man said, I don't read books by women. And I said, oh, well, that's so interesting. Tell me about that a little bit. Why is that? And it turned out that what he was really saying was it didn't have as much to do with gender as it had to do with genre. That he thought that a book by a woman had, and nothing wrong with this, was cozy. Had kittens and quilts and tea and that kind of thing. Well, you look at Chelsea Kane and Val McDermott and Hannah Mary McKinnon and, these are tough, Lisa Jewell, all these are tough women writers who, if you didn't have a name on it, you might not know. Using a woman as a main character, that's what I default to. That's where my brain is. That's what I do. But the male characters are just as important in the books. It may be that what you're talking about here also is point of view, that my books are sort of narrated by this book at least, not all of them, are narrated by women. You're in the woman's point of view. So the men in the book, who are equally important, you're never in their head. And that might be what you're talking about.
Well, I like Jane Ryland's boyfriend, but so I'm waiting for him to come back.
Yes, and that's a good point. And if you read the Jane Ryland books, those are equally in the point of view of Jane Ryland, an investigative reporter in Boston, and Jake Brogan, a wonderful police detective in Boston, and you see the world through his eyes. So maybe read one of the Jane Ryland books and see how you feel about that. I'd love to hear what your reaction to that is.
Teresa asks, what is the best piece of writing advice you received that you still use in your writing?
Oh my golly, the best piece of advice. It's really hard to write a good book, and it is very easy to give up. And no one cares about your book if you're writing. And I hope that's a very writerly question. So I wonder if you're writing. It's very easy to give up. And so one of the things that you have to do, Callie, you were asking me earlier about how I wrote a book a year. I just sit right here and do it. I mean, I have a words a day chart that I have to do, like give myself a little gold star because I'm so needy. I want to have my words for the day done. And in answer to your question, I set myself up then. If I say I'm going to write 1,000 words a day, and I do write 1,000 words a day, what happens at the end of that day? I succeed. I have set myself up to succeed by cutting this difficult thing into a doable task. I don't think, oh my God, I have to write a book. That's 100,000 words. I can't possibly do that. I think I have to write 1,000 words. That's like 5 pages. I can do that. Okay. And then every day I think I did my words. So the best advice is to understand that you're writing a book. It's a big project. It's not going to happen overnight. It's very difficult. And if it's not difficult, you're not working hard enough. But the joy of finishing, the joy of having this gorgeous new world is worth all the difficulties that you may encounter. So every writer is going to say, I'll tell you that the procrastination level is very dangerous. And there was one day when I said to myself, I think I better go alphabetize my spices. And then I thought, sit down, sister, and write that book. This is the procrastination. So the best advice, bottom line, of course, that I'm babbling about this now, is just do it. Just, don't talk about it. Don't think about it. Don't think someday you'll do it. I'm the poster child for doing it now, right? I started writing my first book when I was 55, at a time when people might think you had a great career, you're fine, just don't do that. And I wanted to. I had this great idea for a book. I was obsessed with it. I'll tell you quickly that when I had the first idea, my idea for my first book, I said to my husband, I've got this great idea and I'm going to write a novel. And Jonathan says, great, sweetheart. He says, do you know how to write a book? And I said, how hard can it be? I've read a million of them. And I soon learned how hard it was. And that's when I also learned that I just had to do it, that it was all about me, about my obsession, my compulsion, my passion to do it. So don't lose your passion about it. Just sit down and do it.
Joel wants to know, should he like, in quotes, any of the characters in your book?
That's your call, Joe. The whole likable character thing is a really interesting, fascinating question. My goal is to have you be interested in the characters, to have you wonder what they're up to and wonder what will happen to them. I'm not hoping that the characters are your best friends, but they might be depending on who you are. So that is a very personal question. And I can tell you specifically, there's no supposed to. Here's a world, here's a story, here are some people. Think about what they want and think about what happened to them and what would you do in that situation and what do you think about what they did. It's not you want to come over for a beer. It's like, here's a good story. What do you think about this? Do you like Dexter? We love Dexter, right? But he's not the best of guys. So do we love Hannibal Lecter? Even Sherlock Holmes. Do you like Sherlock Holmes? No, he's kind of mean, but we love to read about him. And that's why Watson describes him, right? Because Watson loves him and we love him because Watson loves him, but you wouldn't love him if you met him on the street. So is that what you kind of mean? I want my characters to be compelling and interesting and unique. Do I want you to like them? Sure, if you want to like them. And if you don't like them, isn't that just as interesting?
So Susan asks, what is your ideal, also in quotes, reader? In other words, how do you conceptualize the readers who love your books?
Oh, I love that, Susan. Thank you. I think about my readers as smart. I think about my readers as understanding the trajectory of a novel, of understanding that it's a puzzle, it's a mystery, it's a psychological drama. I want them to immerse themselves in the story. I want them to understand that when characters make decisions that they may not agree with, that they understand why the character did that and what compels them to do that. I want them to just be thrilled at the twists and surprised at the twists and cheer at the endings and understand that the books are realistic. Everybody, in my books, everybody doesn't walk off in the end arm in arm happily ever after, but these are realistic books. So I want a reader who is smart and a reader who loves to hear a good story.
Okay. Louise, how much inspiration, she asks, do you get from your position as an investigative reporter?
Oh, golly, so much, Louise. I am the luckiest person in the world that I've been a television reporter for so long. I've wired myself with hidden cameras and gone undercover and in disguise and chased down criminals and confronted corrupt politicians. I've been at fires and murders and SWAT teams and nuclear reactors and covered cat shows and craft shows and basketball finals. I've been in the underground at the airport in places that regular people aren't allowed to go. People who aren't reporters aren't allowed to go. And in the basements of courthouses and in prison, had people confess to murder, all those kinds of things. So, wow, what great research. All that emotional information, all that technical information, all that visual information, all that experience definitely goes into the novels. People say, do you do a lot of research for your books? And I say, I've been doing research for 43 years. I just didn't realize that that's what was going on. And that has been a real joy. There is no better job for a crime fiction author than to have been or continue to be a reporter. It's all about telling a story.
So last question, what does the writing of your novels and the many stories that you are compelled to tell and love sitting in that chair crafting do for you that all of those other years of reporting, which I know were very fulfilling, doesn't? I mean, it gives you something else. What does it give you?
You know, there's the Stephen Sondheim musical Sunday in the Park with George. I'm sure you've seen this, about the French Impressionist painter Pointillist George Seurat. And there's a scene in the play, in the musical. I won't sing. There's a scene in the musical where Seurat is on stage by himself with a blank sketch pad. And on this blank sketch pad, he draws a hat. And he looks at it and he says, look, I made a hat where there never was a hat. And he has realized in that moment that he has created something new and beautiful and unique, something that didn't exist before, something shareable that someone else can look at and notice that came out of nothing but his own imagination, that came out of nothing but his own mind, that he created something new. He created a new world out of nothing but his own imagination. And he sings, look, I made a hat where there never was a hat. And it's a song about how we as human beings are the only creatures who can do that. We can make something beautiful, art or music or literature or a thriller, out of nothing but our own imaginations. And then we get to share that new thing, that new world, with readers, because my books are not fulfilled until you read them, until you enter that world of Nora and Ellie and Lacey and Brooke in The First to Lie, or you meet Lily Atwood and her little daughter Rowan in Her Perfect Life. I made those worlds, and that's what I do every day, and that's what I get from it, Callie. Sitting here at this computer, I'm making hats. I'm making new worlds for readers to share, and that is completely inspirational. It brings tears to my eyes to tell it to you, and it brings tears to my eyes to do it.
Well, we who are your fans are grateful that you're continuing to make those worlds. I, for one, I'm looking forward to Jane as well. And I want to thank you for joining us for Beyond the Page, Hank Phillippi Ryan.
My complete pleasure. And again, thank you all for coming. So many people tonight, and I just feel the affection and I feel the community of readers that you all at WGBH have brought together. And I'm so grateful that you invited me here, honored me here with tonight's program.
Well, we'll see you again when you got the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so we hope that you will join us and read the October selection. Come back next month and join us when we're diving into a fascinating conversation with author Elena Dillon, author of The Happiest Girl in the World. The Happiest Girl in the World. The virtual conversation will take place on Thursday, October 21st at 7 p.m. Also, don't forget to join our Beyond the Page Facebook group community and make new friends with fellow bookworms and discuss the novels you are reading with everyone. As always, we hope to see you at another GBH event soon. Have a great night.